Welcome everyone back to the Fearless Artist podcast. I'm excited to be back as host because I've had a few weeks away. So I'm very happy to have my first guest back as Ruth Phillips. Ruth, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's lovely, lovely to be here.
Yes, I was so pleased that you reached out to come on to talk about your new book, Beauty at the Edge of Catastrophe. And I would love to hear about you and your story. I know you're in France right now, beautiful south of France. I'm jealous looking at the sun on your face, thinking of, I don't know how close you are to lavender fields or anything, but just such a beautiful region. So,
Yeah,
yeah, welcome. Please introduce yourself to our
thank you.
audience and excited to chat today.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Yes, it's really good to be here, and just want to say how lovely it is to be part of this growing community of people who are really changing the kind of atmosphere around music making. So really appreciate that and everything you're doing. So first of
Oh,
all,
thank
thank you to
you.
you.
Yeah,
Um,
welcome.
And so, yeah, my name's Ruth Phillips. I'm a cellist, and it's the same old story, injury and stage
Oh,
fright brought me to da 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 da. So there's nothing particularly new in all of that, um, but it has been a wonderful, these things that are so challenging in our lives often do bring so many chances to learn and grow. And I was the person who didn't who was so scared of walking on stage that I actually thought I was going to die. I literally thought I wouldn't survive. And I know that I'm not alone in that. It
mm,
sounds mad. I know it sounds mad, and you can say it to people, but I think many of us actually do feel that badly before we
mm,
perform. So I came from that really, and I used to look up at other musicians on stage, and they seemed to be enjoying themselves. And I thought, how is that possible? Because it was sort of a hell for me. Although I loved music, and I think that that's something I found more and more interesting. Is so many people, so many of us love music so much,
mm-hmm,
and yet the way we're experiencing it on stage is kind of hellish. So I
mm.
wanted to explore that throughout the last, I suppose, pretty much 30 years, I could say. And it's been really interesting. So I did a lot of work with a fantastic yoga teacher, Peter Blackaby, who's in the UK, who's also a kind of mindfulness teacher, and really is the first person who brought a sense of being aware of the whole body. Because I don't know about you, but I learned to play with my head and my hands.
Yeah.
And so that was a new thing, and that changed my life completely. And then I became very interested in the mindfulness aspect of that, and then became trained to be a mindfulness teacher for, it was a very intense two-year training plus another year as a mentor with I'm incredibly lucky to have studied with Tara Brach and Jack Cornfield. So they're two of the biggies, and I feel really privileged to have done that. And I did my main focus on musicians. So I worked, all my practical work was running groups for musicians. So I now sort of incorporate all of that stuff in what I do. I hope
That's
that answers your
fantastic.
question.
Yeah, I know there's so much to dive in here. Thanks for sharing. So, first of all, congrats on your book. I know it came out in February. That's right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when it comes to mindfulness for musicians, I'd love for you to share, what is it and what is mindfulness not?
That's a great question. So, what mindfulness is not, it's not thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not feeling. I think there are a lot of misconceptions around it. So I'm really appreciate you asking actually. Um, I think, I mean, there are many descriptions of mindfulness, and depending on the day, we'll all have a different answer depending on, how I just practiced. And um, but I think it really is about how we meet our experience. It's not changing the experience. So it's, let's say we have difficult thoughts, judgmental thoughts. It's not making the thoughts go away. It's actually looking at how we meet those thoughts and our relationship with those thoughts. And the same with difficult emotions, like many of us experience anxiety and fear around performance. And again, it's not shoving those away and not feeling them and then, hey, let's all feel really positive and joyful, although joy is an incredibly important part of to cultivate, but it doesn't come from shoving the other feelings away. I think you've talked about this, Michelle, I think, about feelings quite a bit in episodes that I've heard, and I think we resonate about that. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions is that it's not thinking. And
Uh-huh.
for us as musicians, I think quite a lot of musicians maybe put off mindfulness because we need to think a tremendous amount. We do need to analyze our scores. We need to think about our technique. We need to think about a lot of things. And thinking is fantastic. But the question of noticing if the thoughts are cultivating ease, or if the thoughts are actually useful, basically, or not useful, or even, really preventing us from expressing ourselves, because we all know that what's commonly known as negative self-talk
Uh-huh.
can be very destructive. It can cause tremendous amount of tension in the body and in the mind. And so let's say we have some kind of judgmental thought about ourselves that's coming up while we're playing. If we can, rather than say, oh, I shouldn't think that, I've got to think positively. Let's say, I've got to think I can do it, I'm great, all that. That's kind of what we call positive thinking, which I'm not a fan of. Rather than that, the thoughts are there. So we don't enter into a fight with our reality. Our reality
Mm.
is that thoughts have arisen. They are the thoughts that have arisen. Can we meet them with kindness? And when we do, there's this miraculous thing that happens, is they arise and they pass, like absolutely everything in life. So it's a really beautiful thing to start experiencing, how
Mm.
everything just arises and passes, because that is the nature of all things.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
I hope that makes some kind of sense and answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, meeting these negative thoughts with kindness, what happens if we don't meet them with kindness?
I think we reinforce, if we don't meet them with kindness, we're basically reinforcing the aversion. We're basically reinforcing the hatred and the thoughts have occurred within us. So if we meet them with hatred and judgment, then we're just adding more layers of the stuff that's actually going to keep us constricted. And so um, we just basically make it worse. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
how we don't, I think there's also a difference with meeting them with kindness doesn't mean we have to condone them or
Mm-hmm.
believe them or say that they're true. That's absolutely not what meeting something. All our experience will, uh, um, if we have a conflict with somebody, we don't have to condone their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Accepting something isn't condoning it. It's not saying it's right, but it is happening.
Right.
So if we enter into a fight with what's happening, then we're just basically entering into a state of tension,
Right.
which isn't helpful.
And if we go back to what you were saying about wanting to die when you went on stage, what
Yeah.
was the stepping stones for you to get out of that place to now what I'm assuming is a place of freedom and joy that you have cultivated?
Yes. Yes, it really is. Amazing. I still sometimes have to pinch myself that I just love playing for other people.
Oh.
I love it. Um, what were the stepping stones? Well, it was a long journey. I think I would say that embodiment was probably the first really important thing. But it depends. I mean, many people don't have issues with that. I definitely grew up I was not at all in my body when I played.
Okay.
So I was very much, I think it is quite common for a lot of musicians to be projected outwards. So how that lives in the body, for example, how does that live in the spine? How does that live in the breath? How does that live in our sound when we're pushing ourselves outwards? Then we're in a kind of extreme state of we're not balanced in that way. So I think just learning to listen in and to settle and to ground has just been incredibly important. And through grounding, also, there's a quietness and a safety that I didn't have. I didn't feel safe. And I think grounding is one fantastic practice to learn to feel safe and that you belong, you belong here in this moment. Um,
Tell me more about this because I love this. And I think you
about
can
the
use that with
grounding.
anything, even in this conversation. We're
Yeah.
present. I was loving what you were saying in the intro of the book about attention. And mindfulness is about where are you directing your attention. That's what I was
Mm.
gathering from how you were explaining it. And I was thinking about how obviously there's so many things screaming for our attention at any one time, or even
Yeah.
scheduling this morning. My brain is
Yeah.
full of scheduling and messages, and it's just like, well, how can I best use my attention? And I like this groundedness that you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So Um, I'll give you an example. I was just practicing just now, and I actually haven't played for a long time because I've been writing this book and I've got limited time because I've got family and various other commitments. And so I either write or I play. So I haven't been playing. So it's an interesting thing to come back because that space gives me a chance to look again quite freshly at old patterns. And so where do I direct my attention when I'm practicing? Where do we all direct our attention when we're practicing is for me an incredibly important question.
Hmm.
And I found myself um, really directing my attention much lower than I normally would. And really noticing, for example, I'm sitting there and there's a shift. I'm missing a shift, right? I'm playing hide and D major and I'm missing a shift. And there are so many ways I could go into that moment, especially with thinking and analyzing, and particularly with telling my body what to do. Right, that's something we do. We're very good at that, telling what our bodies what to do. And I decided this is something that is really changing. I tried to just decide to listen to what was happening,
Mm.
and I really noticed that my right hip was lifting before the shift, and my lower back was um, curving inwards, and I was pushing my chest out towards the cello to sort of find security. All those three things were happening before this shift, but I wouldn't have noticed that before had I not been giving my attention to a more global experience of the body. Now, we don't always need that, but it is very handy to be able to say, okay, now I'm going to give this kind of attention, a global experience of my whole body as this movement takes place. So that's
Uh-huh.
one kind of attention. And again, the quality of the attention is so important because it was curious. And I mean, I've done a lot of practice now with this, but it wouldn't have been in the past a curious attention or a kind attention. It was soft and it was not rushed. And my shift was immediately better, but had I gone into a kind of thought fueled telling my body what to do kind of panic, I'm absolutely sure that I wouldn't have had such a quick reaction to get what I wanted. Basically was to play in tune. Does that make sense? And
Yeah, I mean,
it
this is
felt like
huge.
slowing down made it much
Yeah.
faster, the process, that I
Yeah.
could slow down and soften. um that's just
So
one way.
this is so beautiful and so obvious in a sense if this is what works. Why are we not taught this? Why are we taught to go into this, like, fix this now, you're behind, you should have these notes done. Why are you making mistakes? The rap on the knuckles kind of approach. Because what you're saying, it's so obvious. A teacher observes us. They don't have to play. So they have much
Right.
more awareness to be able to see physically what we're doing
Yeah.
wrong, let's say, to avoid language like right and wrong. But, and so somehow you have been able to cultivate this outer awareness, this objectiveness, and you're asking yourself, oh, what's happening here that I'm missing this? And there's no shame in that. Like, why are you missing this shift? You should know this by
Right.
now. You're a cellist, you're
Right.
professional. Your colleagues would get this faster, whatever negative.
Right.
And you were just like, oh, what's happening here? And then within a few moments, you've solved a problem. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think you're hitting on something very important, and which is the way that we're taught, and the sort of atmosphere, which is very aggressive. I think in a lot of teaching environments, unfortunately, I do also have to say I think it is changing with people like you around and people
That's
doing the
kind.
kind of exploration that that many people are doing, and it's wonderful to see that it's happening. Um, so yeah, so what are we teaching? I mean, I think particularly I'm interested in what are how are we teaching our students to work? We're teaching them, we're telling them what to do so that we're teaching them to tell themselves what to do, right?
Yeah.
If we taught them to listen and to become really aware and mindful of body, thought, mind, heart, emotion, really aware without judgment, we would be teaching them something very, very different. And I think they would have far more adequate tools to teach themselves. Because I can tell myself to lift my little finger, put your little finger up here. But actually, it quite often I find I can't explore that properly until I know what my big toe on my right foot is doing, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
the whole body always acts as one. And what's happening in my mind? Am I actually having the kinds of thoughts that are constricting my movement? What is my intention? You know, is my intention to open, or is my intention to, is also part of music to kind of resist? That's also part of music, is all these things. If we bring a really, I always use this word, but it is a soft and kind attention is not, it's it's got such bad rap, hasn't it? It's like it's weak and it's inefficient, and I just so don't. I think it's absolutely the most efficient way to make changes. So
I
I don't
think
know
that was
whether
the
that
only
answered your
thing
question.
that convinced me to start considering self-compassion as a viable option was the fact that you would get results faster.
Exactly. Yes,
So
say that
trained, I've
again.
been
Shout
so
that from the
focused
roof.
on. Yeah, so that was the only thing because my whole life was like, oh, it's as you're saying, weak to be kind. We don't have time for this. Roll your eyes, get back in there, work harder. And then I heard Kristen Neff talking about, self-compassion. And also I worked with a life coach for a long time. And to think that by treating yourself with kindness, you can actually get where you want to go faster with less blood.
Absolutely.
It was like, wait a second, I can be nice about this and still get
Yeah.
results. I can be happy and work hard at the same time. I don't
Yeah.
have to, and pushing yourself when you have joy, that's a different environment. Like I just did an obstacle race and you push yourself, but it's within the
Yeah.
context of like, this is fun. So
Yeah.
I think there's ways to set up the environment that we're in this learning open mindset that you're sharing about.
Yeah.
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 When you're working with your musician clients, where are you taking them from? Like, where do you see them getting stuck? And what are some of the transformations that you're seeing by incorporating these ideas?
Um, Okay, so we'll just firstly on a kind of absolutely plain technical, physical, because that's what most people come wanting, isn't it? They don't want to, you know, deepen their spiritual practice, which is what another thing I'm very interested in. But that's, but most people come with the technical problems, tension or injury or something like that, or anxiety. So, for example, on a physical plane, I think all of this slowing down and listening in and listening to the wisdom of the body it's like a complete revelation. Our body knows how to move if we let it.
Mm.
But it may be, for example, something I will do with somebody who's got, like just like the thing I just explained. If there's a problem with a shift, I won't go to the hand. I will probably go somewhere near the feet or the hips to see what's happening, to see. So I will bring attention to the movement as a whole always. So, and that's quite new for a lot of people, but it also means the movements become much more natural, because if you reach for a book, you change the balance from one foot to another. You do, you move the whole body, even if it's not visible, it may not even be visible, but there's a shift in balance. And we quite often will be going against that natural whole body movement without knowing it. So I'll often look at those kinds of things, and then slowing things down a lot. So that doesn't mean slow practice, because I think slow practice can be just as negative. As it depends on, how much fast moving aggressive thoughts we put into our slow practice. you But for example, I will work with somebody with, for example, the skeleton of the piece. of a phrase. So taking the main notes and finding the whole shape in the whole body, and
Mm-hmm.
the intention, the emotional intention. Um, and I'll make sure that we find that in, and then we add layers, smaller notes, faster notes. It's a bit difficult to explain without an instrument, but that kind of way of practicing. So rather than slowing down all the fast notes, you get the actual shape of the phrase really, you loop it over and over again so that the body really knows it, like a
Mm-hmm.
route through a landscape. So those are, and then
Sounds like
I
getting
do,
grounded, like you were saying before.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And another thing that I find really important, again through grounding, is rest. Where do we rest? Where do we rest in every phrase? There's in every note. There's a moment of rest. In every there's a part of our body that's always grounded, always resting.
Mm-hmm.
Where are our resting places? And I think we, again, another misconception that we are taught very strongly is that we should always be doing. And how can we rest that doing mind and that doing body and allow movement to happen, allow something to unfold? We've set something in motion. So can we then step back and allow it to unfold? And then you start cultivating a sense of wonder and awe, because then that's when the sort of mindfulness aspect comes in, because you step back and you're able to listen in a much freer and more open way when you're not um, identified with every single note and every single movement. It's so stressful. It's actually too stressful. It's kind of impossible what we're asking ourselves to do,
It's a
a lot of
lot.
the time.
It's very demanding.
So then when you can step back and actually, how do we set something in motion so that what we produce, what we want to, what's written in the music, and then we listen.
Hmm.
Can we quieten the mind so that we can actually listen rather than comment all the time and interfere? So those kinds of, what's the relationship between what's going on in the mind and what's going on in the sound? And yeah, sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're not. I'm enjoying this. I'm just thinking I'd love for you to talk through the themes of the book because you have the breath, the body, thoughts, and emotions. Maybe you can give us a general overview of how you describe this process in the book. Because I think for anyone listening, I mean, all of these things are maybe things that we've heard in bits and pieces, and I like how you're bringing it all together
Yeah.
to give us a way to map out a new approach, let's say,
Mm.
to healthy self-talk while you're practicing and as you're on stage. And then I'm wondering, as you're speaking, I'm like, I wonder how much audiences can pick up on this when someone is in that state of freedom and expression and trust. I think I'm hearing also trust coming through when you're
Yeah,
describing,
definitely. Yeah.
rather than someone who's locked into like over analyzing.
Yeah. Before I go on the kind of whistle stops tour of the book, I just want to pick up on something which I'm not sure how
Yeah,
I can do
sure.
that you just said, which about trust and how the audience responds and if the audience notices. And I think that's really key. First of all, I'm sure you would agree that if we are grounded and feeling safe and open and connected, then the audience absolutely connects with us. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will quite often do an exercise with somebody, for example, and get them to make a movement that when they do that process of stepping back and enjoying listening to the sound they've created or the phrase that's unfolding, and then the same thing, but with somebody with, I can demonstrate for them really manipulating every single note. And it might be very good playing, but I ask them how they feel as they listen to it. And they almost without fail say they feel incredibly stressed. They might be impressed. They might say, oh, that's really good playing, but they're not going to be touched. And so that exercise you can do one-on-one, how do you feel in your body when you hear and you see this kind of playing? And it's not that one's better than the other, but one connects and the other one doesn't. And why are we there if we're not,
Mm.
if we're not wanting to connect? Why are we there? And so the
Yeah.
relationship with the audience through grounding, if we feel safe and we feel quiet in ourselves, then we can actually be in a state where we're together with the audience, and
Mm.
it's not them and us, because I think that's a big mistake. I mean, it's funny. I've heard various people say things like, "Oh, but but act like you're Superman," or think of the audience naked or slipping on banana skins or whatever it is. And it's just all of those are about humiliating the audience and making them less than me, so that I'm super important. And that's not what I want. I want to be with them, as we travel through this music together. So to me, that just creates more separation and more anxiety, because when there's separation, there's anxiety. So I don't do that. That's where the positive self-talk can get very, very dangerous, what we call.
Mm.
It's like you boost yourself up, therefore, if you boost yourself up, you are more than they, right? So that we're
Yeah, yeah,
creating
yeah.
a them and us situation.
Yep.
How do we create a we situation in
Mm.
it with our audience? So one of the things I'll do is I'll really get people to breathe together with the audience and remember that we are all sharing the same air, for example. The air that I'm taking in is not better or worse than the air that in fact, it's the air that I've just breathed out. It can start sounding a bit yucky, actually, but you know what I mean, is that we're
I
all,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I've considered this a lot when I started playing for bigger audiences to not get intimidated by that. Someone was speaking with me about this, and it's like there's already energy in the room. So our job is to walk in and to participate in that energy, to
yes,
participate in what's already happening. There's already, because I was thinking like, oh, I need to like give everything from stage and I need to connect and
yes,
convince and all this stuff. And it's like, well, actually, there's already something happening. So how can you step in to what's going on in the room and to maybe
absolutely.
steer it? And we are conduits and we are the one in the spotlight. So we've got the attention of the people. But there is also that participation. And it took a lot of pressure off for
I
me. I'm like,
love that.
oh,
I
okay.
love
Yep.
that. It's absolute. I couldn't agree more. And in fact, it brings me to something you were talking about when an episode I was listening, when you were talking about making your album, and the emotions that were very strong, the raw emotions, and your relationship to that, which I found very interesting. And something that, again, just like there's energy in the room, so are there all the human emotions, all of them, because that's the nature of being human. And do you know what I mean? So this isn't my sadness or my pain or my joy. It's not. These are our human emotions that they're all there. And like you said, I love that, the way you put that. And I think that's the same with, with one of the problems with anxiety is that we identify with it. It's my anxiety. I've got stage fright, it's about me. And no, we all feel fear. Fear is in the room too. And so when we're playing and we can draw upon this pain, which we have gotten to know through our own pain, through our own life, but that we remember every single human in that audience has also experienced pain and fear and
Mm.
loss and longing. I was working with somebody in the Verbier Festival last year, I think it was, and she just had this real kind of aha moment, thinking, she said she just experienced a very difficult time in her life, and we did this meditation, which I sometimes run, called Just Like Me, where you may have come across that through Kristen Neff's work, but
I think it's
anyway,
familiar, but I don't.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she just could not believe that anybody in her audience could ever have felt what she's feeling. She
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. It was just like a complete click for her that, oh my God, everybody in this room, they haven't had that breakup with that person in that situation, but they have felt this pain in some way. And it made her completely connect to her audience in a new way that they weren't.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about that when you were speaking about your emotions, that coming through your singing. And yeah, I think that's also very helpful in terms of our relationship with our audience, and in creating a non-separation. And then we talk about inclusivity and all of that stuff, and we have to do that work before we can You know, it's on ourselves really before we can open up in that way too, I think. I mean, it's not just all about ticking boxes. It's actually doing about doing that inner work with ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. I'm thinking of when I play for Candlelight, many of the audiences are what we would say, uneducated classical music audiences. So they're just coming because it's like, wow, many of them have never heard a piano concert before. Uh, so more and more, I've realized my purpose in those situations is to offer people a place to come and experience and to
Yeah.
feel, and it just completely switched things for me, because in the classical world, like, you're there to prove, and you're there to, I mean, create great music with great colleagues, of course, but there is still always that element of like, oh, everyone's watching and they're noticing, and they hear mistakes, and this other, yeah, a broader audience that doesn't know that level
Yeah.
of intricacies, let's say. I've had people come up and say, I lost someone this year, and this was the only time I've had
Oh,
to actually sit here and process it. Or, personal stories in my messages. I'm always a little bit surprised that people are so open, and then I realize that they feel safe to share because of the safety in the room when I was on stage. So that's been also very interesting. Like, oh, my job here is to create a space for people to heal and feel and just be human. Like you're saying,
yeah.
we all share these emotions. It's not us and them. It's just
Yeah.
my purpose in this place is to give that to them.
Yeah. I really love that. I couldn't agree more. And that art is a container for that. And that if there's a purpose, for me, if there's a purpose to art, it's to provide that safe container,
That.
you know, for the human condition. And I think that's what you're touching on there. And I suppose one of the questions is, if can we, that I don't yet know the answer to and probably won't in my lifetime, but hopefully we're planting seeds for this, is, can we, the classical music audience, does it have to be like that? Why are people being educated to listen in a judgmental way? I mean, we're part of that education. The way we're playing and performing is contributing to that in some way, and unless it isn't. Do you see what I mean? We can
Mm-hmm.
possibly change that,
Mm-hmm.
by the way what you're doing, coming with that attitude. I think that will change their attitude.
Mm.
I think we can do it. Maybe, it might not take 5 minutes, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thought, and continuing to think about the other, I think, as we express on stage, and to know why we're actually doing this.
yeah, yeah. And it's not, the other thing is that the danger then is we slip into kind of more egotistical thing of like, I'm healing you, I'm doing this, but it's not that either. It's not what you're saying, and that's not what I'm saying, that we're just being together and we're a
Yeah.
conduit to the music. But because then I think there can be a whole other thing. It's like, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to heal you, which is
Mm-hmm.
again just the same problem, but flipped.
So it sounds like a lot about removing ego and serving one
Definitely.
another through the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, being in service, I think, is
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, lovely. Good for you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, if you would like to share a bit about the themes of the book, I'd be curious to hear how you organized your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I've touched on quite a lot of it already. So it's basically, it's built around the 4 pillars of mindfulness. So I break down body and breath just because I'm absolutely nuts about the breath. I think the breath is so fascinating. I could have written a whole book about it, and many books have
Mm-hmm.
been written about it. So I sort of separate that book, breath and body is the first pillar. So there are just those pillars of mindfulness: mindfulness of thoughts, mindfulness of feeling, and then what was the last one? I can't remember. Yeah.
Mindfulness, you have emotions, heart,
Oh yeah, and then there's
thoughts.
the, yeah. So there's thought, feeling, and then there's the whole aspect, which I think you and I have basically been talking about the whole time, really, which is the aspect of the heart. And
Mm,
I've used the Buddhist mindfulness Buddhist construct just because I think he really liked lists, the Buddha. So I think they really appeal to me, his lists. So for the
mm-hmm.
what he calls the heart practices, I really love, and this, I'm sure you'll have come across this with Kristen Neff's work. But so it's kindness, compassion. They call it shared joy, but it could just be called delight. And then the fourth one is equanimity, which is quite interesting, which is just that that these are practices of the heart, and that we must do these practices just as we do our scales and we do our physical work. We must also work at our intention and what is our heart's desire. So we work with the mind. When we play, it's not just, as we talked about, it's not just my left hand and my right hand and my thoughts. It's how is my mind? Is my mind quiet or settled? How is my emotional feeling state? And what is the orientation of my heart? Is my heart orientated towards judgment and competition and proving myself, or is it orientated differently? And so these are things we have to practice, I think. It's not
Mm.
just like I'm just going to go on stage and just give everything and just be really generous. No, we have to practice those things, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that, those things are hopefully give a clear idea of the different areas that are important in our practice, that aren't just learning the notes and deciding on an interpretation and then just doing it. Yeah, so that was the arc, really was those four pillars of mindfulness and the heart practices. So it's built around a kind of Buddhist approach, just because that's where mindfulness comes from, and so I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
honor that.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. The orientation of the heart is something I'm going to bring into my practice today. I think that was a beautiful way to wrap up with the orientation of the heart. So, Ruth, for everyone listening, what's one thing that they could do today based on all the loveliness that you've shared with us about this?
Oh, I would just say, just throughout the day, just noticing if the intention behind our words to ourselves or to others, but particularly if we're practicing, because that's what we're talking about here, is our intention a kind one? Is it kind towards ourselves, and is it kind towards our audience? Just like really, where is where is the orientation of our heart, really? And just
Mm,
stopping and questioning ourselves, because it so often is, and that's okay. That's what we've been taught. We shouldn't beat ourselves up about it either, but just
hmm.
to stop and question, okay, so what is my intention here?
Yeah.
As I judge myself or criticize myself, or then just dropping that and saying, okay, what? So that maybe is just a question for throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Is it kind? What is my intention? Is it kind? I'm going to take that with me. Ruth, thank you so much. How can people find you? How can they get the book?
Well, my website is ruthphillips.com,
Okay.
and there's a link to the book page on my website. Um, And there is a book page which is beauty at the edge of catastrophe.com. It's a bit of a mouthful. And so if anybody wants to do one-on-one sessions or get in touch, I love to hear from people. I love our growing community. So if anybody wants to share anything about their journey with anxiety or injury or anything, I'm always happy to hear from people. And so feel free to get in touch.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help musicians come to a healthier place in their minds and bodies and thoughts. I think it's truly valuable, and I've really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been lovely to be here. Lovely to be with you.
Great. Okay, everyone, make sure you go check out Ruth's book, and we'll see you on the next episode. Be fearless.